If you've ever been in jail, you might have had another inmate come up and tell you about how they've been to space before, or about how they are currently in space at this very moment. Now, it might not be a good idea to refute this, but these claims are to be taken with a grain of salt, because to my knowledge, there has only been 2 points in history where an incarcerated person could say they've been to space and it's actually true. One of these points in history is today, with Space Shuttle pilot James Halswell currently serving a 4-year prison sentence after pleading guilty to 2 counts of manslaughter in 2021. Don't drive under the influence, kids. The other point was in 2007 when astronaut Lisa Nowak was charged with attempted first-degree murder, and her story is absolutely insane. Lisa Marie Caputo was born in 1963 in Washington, D.C. Her dad was a computer scientist and her mother a biologist. In 1969, she watched man land on the moon, and in 1978, she saw the introduction of female astronauts. She paid frequent visits to the National Air and Space Museum, and to make a long story short, she wanted to be an astronaut from a young age. In school, she excelled at both sports and academics. Standard astronaut backstory: Ivy League college, US Naval Academy, graduated with a degree in aeronautical engineering and was commissioned as an ensign in the Navy, where she worked as an aerospace engineer. Like all astronauts, she has an incredible list of achievements, but let's just look at the coolest ones. Firstly, as a woman, she was part of a very small minority in this line of work and fought a constant uphill battle. When she was doing flight training with the Navy in the mid to late 80s, women were banned from combat assignments by law. This led some in the Navy to wonder, why even bother training them? It was very hard to get accepted for flight training, and as a woman, you were training for a job you were literally prohibited from doing. But get accepted she did, and train she did. Here are some of the cool aircraft she got to fly: the Douglas A3 Skywarrior, the LTV A7 Corsair II, the Douglas A4 Skyhawk, the T-39 Sabreliner, and the T-2 Buckeye. That thing's beautiful. Lisa Marie Caputo qualified as a naval flight officer. However, in 1988, she would no longer be Lisa Marie Caputo, because she got married to a former Naval Academy classmate. You might question the wisdom of getting involved with someone you work with, and if that's the case, then brother, you're gonna have a lot of questions by the time this is all over. With her marriage, Lisa Marie Caputo became Lisa Nowak. This name didn't really suit her, because as you'll learn, Lisa Nowak was actually very much in favour of whack. She had 3 kids with Mr. Nowak, whose opinions on whacking are not publicly known, but forget them kids, because in 1995 NASA announced it was selecting a new group of astronauts, and Lisa wanted in. Her application was one of over 2,400 that NASA received. The next year, NASA announced they had selected their candidates for 10 new pilot positions, 9 new international mission specialist positions, and 25 new mission specialist roles, of which Lisa Nowak was one. This class of 1996 was the 16th group of NASA astronauts and is the largest group to date, humorously dubbed the Sardines. Nowak completed her training in 1998, specializing in the operation of the Space Shuttle's robotic arm. At this point, you might be wondering why someone would throw this all away. Like, what crime could be cooler than operating a robot arm on a spaceship? Smoking a cigarette on a motorcycle, maybe, if you stole both the motorcycle and the cigarette. And think about the selection process for astronauts. To be chosen for such an exclusive position, you basically have to be a perfect human being. No cigarette stealers allowed. Accidentally take a pen from the office back in 1982? You're out. But Nowak's life as an overachiever was about to become complicated. In 2002, Nowak's husband, who worked as a flight controller at Johnson Space Center Mission Control, was called back to active duty in the Navy, because Afghanistan. Up to this point, the couple had scheduled their work lives in such a way that there was always at least one of them to look after their 3 kids. Now, Nowak would be alone. In 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster claimed the lives of 7 astronauts, 3 of which were from Nowak's class of 96. She was the personal casualty assistance officer assigned to Laurel Clark's family. Clark had been close friends with Nowak, and her family said Nowak did an exceptional job in this role, taking care of not just all the paperwork, but also looking after Clark's son. They did wonder how stressful taking on all of this might have been for Nowak, especially seeing as she had her own 3 kids. In 2004, Nowak participated in survival training in which her and 5 other astronauts were dropped off in the wilderness in northern Quebec and had to make their way back on foot. This 12-mile journey took 11 days. In these 11 days, Nowak grew close to one of the other astronauts, William O'Faolain, and after their return, the two pursued an extramarital affair. Here we go. This was an even bigger risk than you might realize. Both Nowak and O'Faolain were serving Navy officers, and seeing as both were married, they were both committing adultery. Now, God is very clear on the rules for adultery. Thou shalt not. In this regard, the Navy is in alignment with God. Adultery is considered conduct unbecoming of an officer and a gentleman, which you can be charged with under military law. After a lifetime of hard work to get to where they were, these two goofs were risking it all for some well, I won't be crass about it. Hanky panky. Not long after, O'Faolain's wife discovered emails between him and Nowak that were very salacious. Or, in other words, they betrayed the idea that they were just friends. O'Faolain's wife divorced him in 2005. He moved into a small apartment, gave Nowak a key, and she often visited and left personal effects there. In a brief return to more commendable exploits, Nowak went to space aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery in 2006. She brought a few things like mascots and banners from former schools, as well as her grandmother's engagement ring. Have you no shame? During liftoff, the crew noticed some debris falling off the external tank, and the first day in space was dedicated to seeing if there was any damage. Nowak spent 6.5 hours examining a white splotch on the nose cone with the robotic arm, as the crew feared this may have been the result of some sort of high velocity impact. It turned out it was just bird shit. Upon her return, Nowak was forced to address the shoddy state of her sham marriage, and she separated from her husband in 2007. Around this time, O'Faolain realised he just wasn't feeling the whole affair thing anymore, and he told Nowak it was over, but they could still be friends. According to him, she took it well, which is such a man understanding of relationships, as you'll soon see, because it turned out she did not take it well. O'Faolain thought everything was cool, no problems. He even thought Nowak was very accepting when he told her he had started seeing US Air Force Captain Colleen Shipman. This guy, Cosmic Casanova over here, he thought this all went down great. He didn't see a problem with the fact that Nowak was still calling him nearly every single day, or the fact that she would still come over to the apartment, until his new girl was like, "Why is this woman's bike here? Get the stuff out of here!" Shipman even asked him, "Are you sure she's okay with this? Like, there's not going to be some crazy lady showing up at my door trying to kill me?" To which O'Faolain, or Olf for short, responded, "No, she's fine with all this." However, Mr. Woman Understander never got the key to his apartment back off Nowak. When he went off into space, Nowak entered his apartment, logged onto his computer, and had a look at the emails Shipman had been sending him while he was up there. For an astronaut, this guy sure does seem to have a problem with people reading his emails. Does he not know what a password is? An email from Shipman read, "Will have to control myself when I see you. First urge will be to rip your clothes off, throw you on the ground, and, well, that's enough of that." O'Faolain's responses weren't quite as impassioned as Shipman's. "I need to see you. I am having Colleen withdrawals. Must see Colleen." That sounds like something a zombie might type out. Nowak was not pleased that another woman had taken over what she thought was her spot in O'Faolain's affections. So when she found out that Shipman was currently flying on a trip, she made note of her travel itinerary and used it to draft up an elaborate and obsessively detailed plan. Shipman would return from her trip and arrive at Orlando Airport at 1 a.m. February 5th, 2007, and Nowak would be waiting for her. Nowak took her husband's car, have you no shame, and drove 900 miles from Houston to Orlando. It was widely reported that she wore maximum absorbency garments, which are basically astronaut diapers, to avoid having to stop.
Nowak drove from Houston to Orlando wearing diapers.
She was wearing diapers. Did she say why?
She wore the diapers so that she wouldn't have to pull over during her 950-mile journey.
Diapers.
Diapers.
Diapers?
The diapers.
She wore a kind of diaper.
And in a bizarre display of NASA ingenuity, diapers.
Although she later denied this. She checked into a hotel using the name Linda Turner. She paid only in cash. Colleen Shipman touched down in Orlando shortly after 1 a.m, but she had to wait 2 hours for her bags. I fucking hate the airport. All this time, Nowak was there watching her. She was wearing a hooded trench coat, glasses, and a black wig. When Shipman finally got to the parking lot, she sensed that someone was following her. As she made her way to the car, she heard footsteps running, and she quickly jumped inside and locked the door. Good thing she did, because suddenly there was a woman trying to get in. Nowak then knocked on the window. video telling Shipman she needed help because her boyfriend was supposed to pick her up and now he wasn't there and she needed a ride because she was in this parking lot all alone and it was dark and she was scared. Shipman didn't know who this person was, but she knew something was off. She said she wouldn't give her a ride, but she could go get someone if she needed help. Nowak then asked if she could use Shipman's phone. Shipman said the battery was dead, and then Nowak started talking and she couldn't hear her, but she saw her burst into tears. Maybe this person really does need help, she thought. She winded down her window a little bit to hear better, and as soon as she did, Nowak pepper sprayed her. "You bitch!" she exclaimed as she sped off. A few minutes later, police were on the scene, and they caught Nowak trying to throw away a bag. They confiscated it and searched her car. Her husband's car. What they found was shocking. A loaded BB gun, which looked like just a regular pistol, a drilling hammer, a 4-inch folding knife, latex gloves, rubber tubing, and most shockingly of all, pepper spray. Oh wait, you already knew that. But they also found a floppy disk and USB drives with photos and drawings of bondage, as well as an image of a nude woman, although it wasn't clear who this was. Nowak was arrested on charges of attempted kidnapping, battery, attempted vehicle burglary with battery, and destruction of evidence. At pre-trial arraignment, the prosecution argued that the facts and evidence suggested Lisa Nowak had a well-thought-out plan to kidnap and possibly harm Colleen Shipman. She was ordered released on $15,500 bail under the condition she wear a GPS tracker and not contact Shipman. Before she could make bail, however, the Orlando police also charged her with attempted first-degree murder, in a move her defense claimed was solely to keep her in jail. In a second arraignment, she was charged with attempted first-degree murder with a deadly weapon. Her bail was raised by $10,000, she posted it, and was released. NASA then asked her to come to Johnson Space Center for psychiatric evaluation. Bit late for that, lads. Probably want to beef up your screening process. 2 psychiatrists diagnosed her with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, Asperger's syndrome, a single episode of major depressive disorder, and a brief psychotic disorder with marked stressors at the time of the incident. And if you saw anything other than 2 bears high-fiving in those images, I've got some bad news for you. The bad news for Nowak was that NASA terminated her assignment. The Navy called both William O'Faolain and Lisa Nowak in, now that it was public knowledge that the two had violated the Navy's rules regarding adultery. The Navy terminated O'Faolain's assignment with NASA, and he retired shortly after, in 2008. They decided to wait till Nowak's case was resolved before dealing with her. The evidence against Nowak was pretty damning. As such, she took a plea deal and pled guilty to felony burglary and misdemeanor battery in 2009. She was sentenced to a year's probation. Sounds like she got off lucky, but then the Navy stepped back in. She was reduced in rank from captain to commander and discharged under other than honourable conditions. Years later, William O'Faolain and Colleen Shipman got married. They have 1 son together. What a wild ride! From space to jail. We soared with the eagles and slithered with the snakes. And I tell you one thing, drawing all this in the space of 3 days was really, really fun. And the voices definitely did not come back. If you appreciated the effort, I have a bunch of other videos just like this one, because for some reason I subject myself to this on a weekly basis. Meaning if you subscribe, you'll see a new video every week. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok if you'd like to see the videos there too. I would appreciate the follow. Well, until next time, stay safe.
Does your client have anything she wants to say?
I think she does, Judge. Come forward, please.
I'm glad to have this opportunity to apologize to Ms. Shipman in person.
Why don't you turn and face Ms. Shipman when you do this?
I'm glad to have the opportunity to apologize to you, Ms. Shipman, in person. I am sincerely sorry for causing fear and misunderstanding and all of the intense public exposure that you have suffered. I hope very much that we can all move forward from this with privacy and peace.